Among all the fears humanity has ever faced, war, darkness, demons, destruction, there is one fear greater than all of them. The moment death stands in front of you. And for thousands of years, ancient civilizations believed there was a being who appeared at that final moment. His name was Azrael, the angel of death. No one truly knows what Azrael looks like. Some legends describe him with enormous wings stretching across the sky. Others claim he possesses thousands of eyes, each eye connected to a living soul on earth. And whenever someone dies, one of those eyes disappears forever. But the terrifying part isn't his appearance. It's the fact that no one can escape him. No king is rich enough to buy more time. No warrior is strong enough to defeat him. No genius is clever enough to trick him. Because Azrael does not hunt humans out of hatred. He simply carries out the command of heaven. Yet that raises a chilling question. If Azrael is an angel of God, why does his presence fill humanity with terror? Is he a symbol of divine justice, or a cold reminder that everything we build in this world will eventually disappear? Throughout history, people have feared demons and monsters lurking in the shadows. But Azrael is different. He doesn't hide in darkness. He waits patiently beside every human life from the moment it begins until the second it ends. Some ancient texts describe him as merciful. Others portray him as silent and emotionless. But nearly every story agrees on one thing. When Azrael arrives, there are no second chances. In today's story, we're diving deep into the mystery of Azrael, the being said to have witnessed every death in human history, a celestial figure who never ages, never sleeps, and never stops working. And perhaps, at this very moment, while you're watching this video, Azrael is already waiting for the next name to appear on his list. For as long as humanity has existed, people have feared one thing above all else: death. Entire kingdoms were built trying to escape it. Ancient emperors searched for immortality. Warriors fought to leave their names behind forever. Scientists spent centuries trying to extend human life. Yet no matter how powerful, wealthy, or intelligent a person becomes, every human being eventually faces the same unavoidable moment. And according to ancient legend, no one faces that moment alone, because there is a being who appears at the edge of every human life. His name is Azrael, the angel of death. Unlike demons, Azrael was never described as evil. He was not a monster lurking in darkness, waiting to torture souls. In many traditions, Azrael was actually considered one of heaven's most loyal servants, a celestial being created for one sacred purpose: to guide souls from the world of the living into the world beyond. That idea alone terrified people, because it meant death was not random. Someone was watching. Someone knew the exact second every heartbeat would stop, and that someone had existed since the beginning of humanity itself. The name Azrael appears most famously in Islamic and Jewish mystical traditions, though versions of the angel of death exist across countless cultures. Some stories describe him as unimaginably beautiful, radiating divine light brighter than the stars. Others portray him as a massive being covered with thousands of wings and countless eyes. Every eye represented a living person on earth, and whenever someone died, one eye vanished forever. Imagine the horror of that image. At this very moment, billions of eyes remain open, but one day, yours disappears too. What made Azrael especially terrifying was not rage or violence. It was his silence. Ancient stories rarely describe him speaking. He does not argue. He does not threaten. He does not beg people to change their fate. Azrael simply arrives when the appointed hour comes, and once he appears, the journey is over. In many American horror films and modern dark fantasy stories, the angel of death is often portrayed wearing black robes with giant shadowy wings. But older traditions were far more mysterious. Some claimed Azrael could appear differently, depending on the soul he came to collect. To the righteous, he appeared peaceful and comforting. To the wicked, he appeared horrifying, beyond imagination. One ancient legend says that when a good person dies, Azrael removes the soul as gently as water pouring from a cup. But when an evil soul dies, the process feels like thorns being dragged through flesh. Whether those stories are true or symbolic, they reveal something important about humanity. People have always wanted to believe that death means something, that there is justice beyond this world, that the cruel do not escape forever, and that the innocent are not abandoned in the dark. But Azrael's existence raises another terrifying possibility. What if he has witnessed every tragedy in human history, every war, every murder, every plague, every crying mother beside a dying child? Imagine carrying the memory of billions of deaths across thousands of years. Imagine hearing humanity scream, pray, beg, and weep every single day, without ever being allowed to interfere. That is why some modern writers no longer portray Azrael as terrifying alone. They portray him as tragic, a being trapped by duty. Because unlike humans, Azrael has no choice. He cannot spare a young father. He cannot delay a dying king. He cannot give someone 5 more minutes to say goodbye. The command comes from heaven, and Azrael obeys. Some ancient texts even describe him keeping a giant heavenly scroll containing the names of every person who will ever live. As long as a name remains written, that person survives. But when the name fades, Azrael begins his journey. No one can hide from him, not in castles, not in battlefields, not in hospitals surrounded by machines. Death eventually reaches everyone, and perhaps that is why the idea of Azrael continues to fascinate modern audiences, especially in America. In today's world, people spend enormous amounts of time trying to avoid thinking about death. Social media celebrates youth. Hollywood glorifies beauty and power. Technology creates the illusion that humanity controls everything. But Azrael represents the one truth nobody can control: the end. No matter how successful someone becomes, death remains undefeated. And deep down, people know it. That fear explains why stories about the angel of death continue appearing in movies, television, video games, and novels. Audiences are drawn to the mystery because Azrael forces humans to confront the one question nobody can fully answer: what happens after we die? Some believe Azrael guides souls toward peace. Others believe he stands at the doorway between heaven and hell, separating the righteous from the wicked. And some fear he is simply the final witness to humanity's fragile existence. But one detail appears again and again throughout ancient traditions. Azrael does not hate humanity. In fact, some legends say he mourns for humans more than humans mourn for themselves. One story claims Azrael weeps whenever innocent souls suffer. Another says he once asked God why humans fear him so deeply when he merely follows divine orders. According to the legend, God answered, "Because you remind them that their time is limited." That single idea may explain why Azrael remains one of the most haunting figures in religious mythology. He is not evil. He is inevitable. And perhaps inevitability is more frightening than monsters. After all, demons can be fought. Villains can be defeated. Empires can fall. But no human being has ever escaped death forever. Some ancient scholars even believed Azrael stands beside every person throughout their entire life, silently watching as time runs out little by little. Every breath, every decision, every wasted opportunity slowly moves a soul closer to the final moment when the angel of death finally steps forward. And when that moment comes, everything changes. Titles disappear. Money loses meaning. Pride collapses. The only thing left is the soul itself. That is why the legend of Azrael is ultimately not just about death. It is about how humans choose to live while they still have time. Because one day, according to the ancient stories, the angel of death will stand before every person who has ever lived. And when Azrael calls your name, there will be no escaping the silence that follows. If Azrael truly exists, then he has witnessed more suffering than any being in creation. Think about that for a moment. Before the first empire rose from the desert sands, Azrael was already there. Before humanity built cities, crossed oceans, or walked on the moon, the angel of death had already watched countless souls leave the world behind. He stood beside dying kings in golden palaces. He stood beside starving children forgotten by history. And according to ancient legends, he treated them exactly the same. That is what made Azrael different from every earthly power humans had ever known. Kings can be bribed. Judges can be corrupted. Armies can be defeated. But death remains completely fair. It comes for everyone. Some religious traditions describe Azrael as one of the greatest angels ever created, not because he rules heaven or commands armies, but because he carries the heaviest burden imaginable. He must separate souls from the people they love, every second of every day. Imagine entering a room where a family is crying around someone taking their final breath. Imagine hearing prayers, fear, regret, and heartbreak over and over again for thousands of years. Now imagine never being allowed to stop it. That is the tragedy of Azrael. Many modern audiences picture the angel of death as cold and emotionless. But older mystical stories tell a very different version. In some traditions, Azrael was once overwhelmed by grief after witnessing humanity's endless suffering. He saw mothers lose children. He watched entire civilizations collapse in war and plague. He witnessed innocent people die young, while evil men sometimes lived long lives. And still, he had to continue his duty. One legend says Azrael once asked God why humans feared him so much when he was only carrying out divine will. According to the story, God answered, "Because your presence reminds them that their time on earth is temporary." That line contains the true horror behind Azrael. Humans fear him not because he is cruel, but because he represents truth. A truth people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Modern society is built on distraction. People chase money, fame, pleasure, and power as if those things can somehow protect them from mortality. But Azrael stands as a reminder that eventually every human achievement fades away. The rich die. The powerful die. The famous die. And when the final moment comes, nobody can negotiate for more time. This idea became especially powerful in American storytelling because it clashes with humanity's obsession with control. In movies and fiction, heroes usually defeat the monster. They survive impossible odds. They overcome darkness through courage and strength. But Azrael cannot be defeated. That is why he feels so unsettling. He represents the one enemy every human loses against eventually. And yet, some stories suggest Azrael himself may suffer because of his role. According to ancient mystical writings, the angel of death was not created to enjoy taking lives. He was created to maintain the balance between life and eternity. Without death, the world would collapse under endless suffering, endless aging, endless decay. In that sense, Azrael is not destruction. He is transition, a doorway between worlds. Some traditions even claim Azrael comforts righteous souls during their final moments. While humans see death as terrifying, certain religious stories describe it as a release from pain, fear, and earthly suffering. In these legends, Azrael appears peaceful to the faithful, guiding them gently toward the next existence. But to evil souls, the experience becomes horrifying. Ancient texts often describe wicked people seeing Azrael in monstrous form, surrounded by darkness and unbearable terror. Some stories say his mere presence reveals every hidden sin a person tried to bury during life. No lies, no masks, no escape. Imagine standing before a being who knows every secret you ever hid from the world. That image terrified ancient civilizations. And perhaps it still terrifies people today. Because deep down, humanity fears judgment almost as much as death itself. One of the darkest legends surrounding Azrael claims that he knows the exact moment every human being will die, long before it happens. According to the story, he watches people laugh, dream, fall in love, and make plans for the future, while already knowing how their story ends. That idea is deeply unsettling. Imagine sitting beside someone at a dinner table while secretly knowing it is their final night alive. Imagine watching a child play happily while knowing tragedy waits years ahead. Azrael sees all of it, and yet he remains silent. Some scholars believe this silence is symbolic. The angel of death does not interrupt human life because humans are meant to live freely. People are given time, choices, and opportunities to decide who they become before the final moment arrives. In other words, Azrael is not the villain of the story. Time is. Every second moves humanity closer toward him, and nobody notices until it is too late. That may be why stories about Azrael continue surviving generation after generation. The angel of death forces people to confront questions they normally avoid. What truly matters in life? What happens when everything ends? If death can arrive at any moment, are people wasting the little time they have? These questions become even more powerful in moments of tragedy. During wars, pandemics, and disasters, humanity becomes painfully aware of mortality again. Suddenly, people remember how fragile life really is. And in those moments, the image of Azrael returns, watching silently, waiting patiently, never early, never late. Some legends even say Azrael will remain at his post until the end of the universe itself. When the final human soul leaves the earth, only then will his task finally end. Imagine the loneliness of that existence, to stand outside time itself, to witness every human civilization rise and collapse like dust in the wind, to carry the memory of billions of lives, while never living a human life of your own. Perhaps that is why Azrael remains one of the most mysterious figures in spiritual mythology. He is terrifying not because he is evil, but because he forces humanity to face reality. Every life has an ending. Every heartbeat is temporary. And somewhere beyond human sight, the angel of death continues waiting for the next soul to call home. There is a reason humanity has never stopped telling stories about death. No matter how advanced civilization becomes, the fear never disappears. Ancient people feared death in dark caves lit by fire. Modern people fear death in brightly lit hospitals surrounded by machines. Technology has changed. Empires have changed. Human culture has changed. But the silence surrounding the end of life remains exactly the same. And within that silence, the name Azrael still survives. Because the legend of the angel of death is ultimately not about dying. It is about what humans realize moments before they die. Across countless traditions, there is one detail that appears again and again. When Azrael arrives, people suddenly understand how temporary life truly was. The arguments that once seemed important no longer matter. The money they spent decades chasing becomes meaningless. Pride disappears, status disappears. Only truth remains. That is why many ancient scholars believed Azrael was not sent to punish humanity, but to awaken it, to remind people that life is a gift measured in limited time. And perhaps that is the deepest reason humans fear him, not because death exists, but because most people realize too late that they never truly lived. One ancient story tells of a wealthy ruler who spent his entire life building an empire. He surrounded himself with gold, armies, and servants. He believed his power made him untouchable. But one night, while celebrating inside his palace, he suddenly noticed a silent figure standing at the end of the room, Azrael. The king demanded to know how anyone entered without permission. The angel of death simply replied, "I was invited the moment you were born." Those words capture the terrifying beauty behind the legend. Death is not something that suddenly appears one day. It walks beside every human from the very beginning, every birthday, every celebration, every victory, every heartbreak. Azrael waits patiently through all of it, and unlike humans, he never forgets how the story ends. This idea became incredibly powerful in modern American storytelling because it touches a hidden fear inside nearly everyone. People spend their lives acting as though time is endless. They delay dreams. They postpone love. They assume tomorrow is guaranteed. But the legend of Azrael destroys that illusion. Tomorrow is promised to no one. Some spiritual traditions even suggest that humans are not truly afraid of death itself. Instead, they fear regret. They fear reaching the end of life and realizing they wasted the precious time they were given. That may explain why stories involving Azrael often feel strangely emotional rather than simply horrifying. The angel of death is not usually portrayed as angry. He is calm, silent, almost sorrowful, as though he understands something humanity refuses to accept, that every human life is fragile beyond imagination. Think about how quickly entire lifetimes disappear. Children become adults. Adults become elderly. Years turn into memories. One day a person is laughing with friends, making plans for the future, and before they realize it, decades are gone. Azrael represents that unstoppable passage of time, and perhaps that is why he continues haunting human imagination generation after generation. Because deep down, every person knows the clock is moving. Some legends claim that during a person's final moments, Azrael allows them to see their entire life clearly for the first time. Every act of kindness, every betrayal, every missed opportunity, every word spoken in anger, not to torture them, but to reveal the truth of who they became. Whether that story is symbolic or literal, its message remains powerful. Human beings are shaped by the choices they make while time still exists, and time never stops running out. In many modern interpretations, Azrael has become more than a religious figure. He has become a philosophical symbol, a reminder that mortality gives life meaning. Without endings, moments would lose value. Love would lose urgency. Human existence would drift endlessly without purpose. Ironically, death may be the very thing that makes life precious. Without Azrael waiting at the end, humanity might never appreciate the time it has. That idea changes the entire meaning of the angel of death. Perhaps he is not heaven's executioner. Perhaps he is heaven's reminder. A reminder that life is temporary. A reminder to forgive while there is still time. To love while people are still alive. To speak the words that fear keeps buried inside. Because eventually every opportunity disappears. And once Azrael arrives, no unfinished dream can be reclaimed. No apology can be taken back. No extra years can be purchased. That truth is terrifying. But it is also strangely beautiful. Because mortality forces humans to value moments that would otherwise be ignored. A conversation with family, a sunset, a child laughing. Small moments become priceless once people understand they cannot last forever. Maybe that is why stories about Azrael have survived for thousands of years, while countless other legends faded away. He represents the one mystery every human being must eventually face alone. And no matter what people believe about religion, heaven, or the afterlife, death remains universal. The angel of death belongs to everyone because mortality belongs to everyone. Rich or poor, young or old, good or evil. Every path eventually leads toward the same final doorway. And according to the ancient legends, Azrael stands waiting beside it, silent as eternity. Some stories claim that at the very end of the world, after the final soul has left the earth, Azrael himself will finally look upon the empty universe he watched for countless ages. And no more wars, no more human voices, no more beating hearts, only silence. And for the first time since the beginning of creation, even the angel of death will complete his final task. Perhaps that is the saddest part of all. Azrael may understand humanity better than humans understand themselves. He has witnessed every act of love, every sacrifice, every cruelty, and every moment of hope across history. He has watched humanity at its absolute worst, but also at its absolute best. And despite all the darkness he has seen, the human story continues. People still love, still dream, still fight for meaning, even while knowing the ending awaits them. Maybe that is what makes humanity extraordinary. Not that people escape death, but that they continue living anyway. And somewhere beyond human sight, beyond time itself, the angel of death continues watching silently, waiting for the moment every soul finally hears its name, called by Azrael.